Hi, everyone. It's really good to see all of you here. I hope you've all been having a really good 2022 so far. My name is Judy Jung, and I'm the Director of Product at XtremeLabs. And I am so excited to kick off this webinar series. As you might have heard from some of our newsletters recently, we've been trying to plan and find additional ways to engage with the XtremeLabs community. And so that's one reason why we are starting this webinar series off today. And we're expecting to be scheduling the next one in March. So please keep your eyes peeled in our newsletters, as well as some of the other communications we sent out about the topic for the next one. So today I am really excited to welcome Nick Benningfield and Maury Ghazawi as our presenters. Nick is a senior member of our lab support team. He and his team are a vital link between our frontline instructors and students and the rest of our company. So since this is the first webinar in our series, Nick will be giving us a demo of our lab environment, and he will focus particularly on some of our classroom features and talk about how instructors can take advantage of these features to engage a little more virtually with their students. And after Nick finishes the main part of his demo, we'll open up the meeting chat and start to take some questions if anybody has them. And at the same time, Maury and I will discuss what we are seeing in terms of trends and in terms of our roadmap for this year. And we'll also talk about some of the new innovations that are coming up this year at XtremeLabs. And Maury has a special insight because he is our Director of Market Development, as well as our Chief Training Officer. So what that means is that Maury has conversations all day long with instructors as well as with training companies who are planning out their education and training schedules for the year. Just a quick note before I pass it over to Nick. The XtremeLabs community consists of so many different people in different roles and from different organizations. Our community includes customers and partners who are college professors, who are trainers from corporate training organizations, who are technology leaders from Fortune 500 companies, as well as published authors and subject matter experts in all areas of technology. And all of you help to inform the work that we do, as well as the work that we'll be doing next. So I just wanted to extend a big thank you to all of you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for continuing to help us innovate. So without any further ado, here is Nick with our lab environment.
Thank you very much, Judy. It's great to be here, and it's wonderful to see all the people who have joined us for our first webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and get started. So I'm going to start from the very beginning. All users, whether you're an instructor or students preparing for a class, will need to first log into our website and create their own account. Registration for our website is very simple. You'll navigate to one of our several portals, select the register option, enter your name, email, and password, and as soon as you click sign up, you'll be directed to our access codes page. First time going into our website, you will not have any access codes. So you will first need to register an access code in the upper right corner here. Once you do, your access code will be listed under My Codes, and where you'll be able to see the course name and the expiration date. Once you've redeemed an access code, the code will, or the labs will appear under the View Labs tab. Now, almost all the labs that that XtremeLabs hosts are split into different modules. Each module will have its own duration. The name will be listed for each of its own tiles as well. And when you're ready to take a lab, all you'll need to do is select Take Lab. Now, the way the XtremeLabs system is set up is every time you select to launch a lab, a brand new set of virtual machines, an entire new environment is created for you. XtremeLabs' primary focus is on reusability. So every time you launch a lab, a new environment is created, new resources are prepared, and you'll be able to retake the lab as many times as you want. Now, once you've launched the lab, I've switched over to another view, which is showing us what the actual environment looks like. The XtremeLabs environment is split into two primary sections. You have the virtual machine window on the right, and what we call the lab control pane that takes up the left-hand side of the screen. Now, if you've ever worked with virtual machines before, then this should be basically identical. We use a Hyper-V environment for all of our virtual machines. Everything from copy and pasting will work inside the windows. Basically, it's identical to using any other lab or using your own local computer. Now, most of all the work you'll be doing will be taking place in the lab control pane on the left here. The lab control pane is split into three tabs. The first tab is the lab step tab. The lab steps will be split by task and exercise. As you complete the tasks, you'll be able to select these checkboxes next to the steps to mark your progress. A lot of our labs will include what we call paste content steps, which will allow users to mostly used for PowerShell commands. You'll be able to select the step here and it'll paste the entire step into the virtual machine for you. And then you navigate between the different exercises by buttons at the bottom, previous exercise and next exercise. A lot of the lab environments we host have different virtual machines as well. So that'll bring us to the second tab. This is the VM Operations tab. From here, you'll be able to select all the different virtual machines that are used for your environment. The transition should be basically seamless. In addition, shortcuts for the virtual environments, such as Control-Delete, are present. Additional options for pasting text into the lab environment that may be outside of the lab steps, or if for some odd reason that Control-V on your keyboard isn't working. Restarting the virtual machine in case it's required by the lab steps. We do have some labs, for instance, that simulate blue screen of deaths, so you need to restart the VM to resolve those issues. We also have a screenshot system. If you wish to have students able to take screenshots, they can just take screenshot. It'll take a screenshot of whatever the virtual machine window is showing right now, including you can go to all the different virtual machines and select this option as well. And then the screenshots will appear in the bottom left-hand corner. This is primarily useful if you have users who are maybe unfamiliar with clipping tools or snipping tools. This will let them take a quick screenshot if they have a question to ask the instructor, and then save these, send them over to the instructor or to our support team if they have any questions. Finally, we do have accessibility options. If someone does need the screen reader enabled inside the environment, this can be done from the accessibility option. In addition, we do have a little support chat in the bottom right-hand corner. This can sometimes overlay or sit over the virtual machine window, so an option to disable this is available as well. The final tab we have for the lab control pane is the information tab. And there's several different types of information that can be available here depending on the lab you're taking. For the most part, anyone who's part of an active classroom will see the classroom details available. Name of the instructor, the dates for the classroom, name of the classroom. In addition, the instructor has the options of configuring a couple links. For instance, if you're doing an online class and say have a Zoom or Teams meeting that you want your students to have access to, you can add a link to that meeting directly to the UI. In addition, if you have a file repository that you want to have files available to your students while they're taking the labs, you can also make a link for that available as well. Some of the other options, if you're taking an Office 365 course, then the credentials for logging into your Office tenant will be available here. In addition, we do have a couple courses that have network information available, particular to your lab session, that are required to complete the labs. They'll be available on this tab as well. Finally, all of our labs will include a copy of our user guide under the file section. Users will be able to select this and it'll just open another tab in the browser. That'll give them access to our XtremeLabs user guide. A couple last features. If you ever have a second screen and you want to make a little bit more room in your environment, you do have the option of popping the lab control pane out. You can shift this over to a second screen, and a lot of our environments will resize to take up a lot of the extra space. My computer isn't quite set up for that right now, so ignore this, but for most users, this will resize automatically. If you ever want to add this back into the environment, you just simply close the new window and it'll appear back in the lab environment. Additionally, once you are done with your lab, the lab actions menu here will have the ability to end your lab environment. This will shut down and tear down all of the resources used in your lab. This is mainly only used if you are ready to move on to a new lab, as users can only have one lab running at a time. Now, if you need to take a break but don't want to lose all your resources, the option to save the lab environment is available as well. Saving a lab is available to users who are in an active classroom and will allow you to save your environment, come back over the weekend, or back on Monday after you eat dinner, etc., to finish all your work. Please note that above this is the lab timer. Once the lab timer ends, an option to extend the lab will appear. If you do not accept the extension, then your lab will tear down. All work will be lost. So another neat feature of the Save Lab option is that when you resume a saved lab, your lab duration is refreshed. Last but not least, we do have several ways of getting contact with our support team who is available 24/7. We are always available to assist if you have any questions or if you have any issues with the environment. We do have a chat option in the bottom right-hand corner. In addition, we have a support and contact us option at the bottom of the screen, and this will let you submit a forum to us or email to us, which does have the option of attaching screenshots if you did take any in your session, as well as you can always call or email us directly. So that's been a look at our lab environment. Everything here is designed to be as simple to use for new users as possible. For now, I'm going to go ahead and save this lab to show you what it looks like when we save it. Little confirmation that it's being saved. Oop. Once you have saved your lab environment, the option to resume it will be at the very top of your course list. It does take a few minutes to be saved, but once it has, an option to resume the lab will become available. Now I'm going to switch back over to my instructor view here and talk about some of the options instructors will have uh, for interacting with their classroom and assisting their users. All the features for instructors will be available under the Manage Classroom tab. This is a tab that's only available to instructors once they have redeemed an instructor access code. Once you've redeemed an instructor access code, your classroom and any other classrooms you are currently the instructor of will be displayed in a list. We're going to expand the details for this classroom by selecting the Details option on the right. So there's several options here, or several features instructors will have access to from this page. First, you will always have the option to edit the classroom name. In addition, the links for that virtual meeting and the file sharing repository links are available here as well. You just simply select Edit Meeting or Edit File Sharing. And then you can select an option from the list or just select Other and then enter a link to add it to the UI. In addition, if you don't want anything added, You just select none and leave this blank, and it'll remove the option. So you don't need to worry about it being available if you don't have anything to add. We have links for all of our resource guides for the student instructor guide primarily, if you wish to distribute this ahead of time. We do have a newer feature for classroom chat as well, which is this tab on the right-hand side. This is available to students and instructors while they're part of the classroom. This will let you chat between everyone, see if your students have any questions, they'll be able to post them here. If you have a secondary platform such as Teams or Zoom that you are communicating with your students, you do have the option of turning this off, which will remove that chat bar. So last, I actually need to resume this lab real quick because I want to show off joining an active session. I selected Take Lab. It's going to resume the saved lab and should take just a moment to load. Now, while this is going on, I'm actually going to switch back over here and talk about another feature for instructors, and that is going to be under the dashboard. Now, a big part of managing a classroom is keeping track of how much your students are using the labs. Now, under the dashboard section, there is a student usage report. Clicking this will open another tab in your browser, and this will let you keep an eye on how much your students are using the labs. Every time a student launches a lab, an entry will be added to this report. Or if they launch a lab they've already launched previously, it'll increment the launch counter for it. In addition, whenever a user ends their lab, the amount of time they've spent in that environment does get added to this as well. This is very useful for lets you keep track of just how much your students are using the labs. For some like instructors such as in college environments, it'll let you know who may be struggling with a course. If someone is having to launch a lab more than others are or spending more time in the labs, you may be able to use that information to check in on them. Other times, maybe if you know that a lab is supposed to take, 45 minutes to complete, but someone only spent 20 in it, you may want to be able to check in on them to see if they're having any issues with the lab as well. You do have the option of sorting this report by username and lab title to filter through it, as well as download all the data into a spreadsheet so that you can apply your own filters as well. Now let me check to see so that my lab has resumed. I'm going to go back to classroom details. Now at the bottom of the classroom details page is a student section. This will let instructors see who has registered for the class, the access codes that they have redeemed, as well as if they have an active lab session, there will be a blue link here that'll let them select it. It'll open another tab in your browser, and this is what we call an instructor shared session. So it'll connect me to the student session, and using this, I am able to interact with my students' lab environment at the same time they are. So I'm actually going to switch my view here real quick. On the left side here, I have the instructor session. On the right-hand side is my student session. So as the instructor, I have the ability to interact with the virtual machine. The student does get a little label on the cursor on the right-hand side when you do this to indicate that you have control of the environment. In addition, as the instructor, you're able to switch to their other virtual machines and interact with these without interfering with your student. So for instance, if your student reports an issue on one virtual machine, they can keep working in another one while you join their session to take a look. While you are connected to a session, you have full control over their session, switching virtual machines, using the shortcuts. You also will see where they are in the lab steps, where they have the last checkbox selected when you join their session. The only thing you cannot do when you've connected to a user session is end or save their lab. If you try to do so, you will get an error. All right. So this has been a showcase of the XtremeLabs lab environment and some of the tools and features available to students and instructors who are taking the course. I guess though, let's go ahead and open for anyone who has any questions.
Well, hi everyone. So this is Judy again. Thank you, Nick, for giving that demo. I see that there are some questions coming into the meeting chat, so feel free to continue putting in any questions you might have. I have unmuted everyone, but please just stay muted if you can, unless you do want to ask a question. In the meantime, as we wait for questions to come in, Maury and I will talk a little bit more generally about some of the new features that we're planning on, as well as some of the direction that we'll be heading in this year. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and we'll just talk a little bit more about some other new features that we want to show you. So can everyone, Maury, can you let me know if you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so in addition to some of the features that Nick was showing you, I also wanted to point out that when you are in the account portal, in the top right-hand corner, you can click on your profile icon, and then the top drop-down item is what's new. If you click on that, you will be brought to a new page that includes more information on our new features. So for example, right now, one of our new blog posts talks about communicating via the classroom chat, which Nick already showed you earlier from the instructor view. And there are two tabs up here, blog and platform updates. There's also a button you can click here, full article, if you want to read more. So this is actually imported from our XtremeLabs.io website. So if you want to see all of our blog articles and want to see all of the new features that we've recently included, then you can just go to that website and kind of see all of them at once. But here we're including the ones that are most relevant to your lab experience. So if I were to click full article, then it would pop up with more information, and then you can also close that. Now, if I were to go click on the platform updates tab, that would show more detailed update history. So there are, this would show the history of different bugs that have been fixed, as well as features that have been added, and can provide kind of a helpful snapshot of what's changed since the last time you've used the labs. And as you're going through some of the new changes, if you have any questions at all, or if you have any suggestions on new features to include, you can always send us an email, info@XtremeLabs.io.
The question is that I have a XtremeLabs subscription, which I have got as an MCT Microsoft Certified Trainer program. I want to conduct certain classes for my attendees. Now, I want to understand that do I need to have any additional licenses for that, or I mean, is it preferable to do with the same?
Yes. So Jay, what I'm hearing is you are a Microsoft certified trainer, and so you have a subscription access to the MCT Readiness Labs, and you're wondering how you can teach students, how you can get students access to our platform. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for your question, Jay. So that's a good question, and I think there are quite a few people here who are also Microsoft certified trainers. So that's a program that we support. We're the official lab hoster for MCTs who want to do lab prep ahead of their classrooms. And that's a program, obviously, through Microsoft. So the Microsoft, the MCT Readiness program is quite separate from the classrooms that we host for instructors and for students. And if you want to start a classroom as an instructor and be able to send lab codes like Nick was showing earlier to students, you'd have to purchase that access through our sales team, or you can also go through one of our learning partners. Maury is actually on the sales side, and he can also help if you want to reach out directly to him.
All right, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Good question. Okay, so I'll keep going with some of this, some of our Q&A here, but feel free to continue adding questions to the meeting chat. All right, so so kind of this is a good segue from Jay's question, but so since we are the official provider for MCT Readiness Labs, we use the kind of same back end to also allow MCT access to lab prep. So if you are an MCT, you have kind of a regular account and you don't have access to MCT Readiness Labs yet, if you go ahead and log into XtremeLabs and click on access, you'll be able to see the section on top, at the top of the access codes page, where you can click and then register as MCT, and then that will give you free access to all of the MCT readiness labs that are part of your benefits as an MCT. And if you do have any questions about that, feel free to add it to the chat or raise your hand, and we can definitely answer those. All right.
Where do we get that code from, the one which you are talking about right now?
Jay, I think your question is, where do you get the code from? So the codes are purchased. You can either purchase them through learning partners or through Coursera Marketplace, or you can reach out directly to Maury. I think Maury is typing into the chat right now. Okay. All right. So I think Nick already covered the classroom chat. You can access that as a student from within the lab environment. And as an instructor, you can also see the full transcript of all of the chat that was within the history from the instructor classroom page. So this is just an example of that. All right, and then feel free to continue asking questions, but Maury and I will just talk a little bit more generally about the direction that we're heading in 2022. So let me just give a kind of overview, and then Maury and I will chat a little bit. So this year there are 6 main areas that we're focusing on. The first one is integration. First of all, let me ask the participants in this webinar, are you guys instructors, are you students, or are you from a training company? Feel free to just put that in the chat. So what we've been noticing is that virtual learning has become more and more prevalent, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of various technology advances that we've been seeing and the ubiquity of accessing a lot of services in the cloud. And there are a few different ways that we're approaching integration. We're working with academic and training organizations that have their own learning management systems, so their own platforms where they already have a lot of courseware and content for their students. And we currently are able to integrate with them through LTI. And what that means is that students who are within an LMS can seamlessly be able to access and launch our labs without having to re-register for an XtremeLabs account. So basically, SSO single sign-on makes it a little easier for students to jump between the content that they're already seeing in an LMS and also be able to launch our lab without too many steps in between. So that's one way. If this is something that you or your organization is interested in, feel free to reach out to Maury, and we can definitely chat about LTI integration. The second way that we are integrating is through APIs. And this is because a lot of organizations may or may not have mature learning management systems. They may or may not have mature platforms of their own, but they may not need full LTI integration, or they may just want to integrate small pieces like creating a classroom or being able to access certain instructor features. So what we're going to be doing over the next several months is we're going to be rolling out a set of APIs to our partners so that we can start testing how folks would be able to use these APIs. So if you are at all interested in helping us to beta test this, feel free to let any one of us know, and we can add you to a list. The second thing that we're focusing on this year are insights. So this includes usage statistics, student progress, how instructors are using our labs, what they're finding to be useful, what they wish could be improved. This is how much time students are spending within a lab, what time students are entering the lab, how much latency, if any, there is in a lab. Any kind of metric we're planning to roll into dashboards, which we can then provide to our instructors and our learning partners. So, so this means that as instructors, you'll be able to see not just the student history that you currently can within our lab platform, but then you can also have a summary of what all your students have been doing and what their usage patterns have been like. And this means that if you are a learning organization, you'll be able to see the roll-up of all of that data from all the instructors over any given period. And currently we're targeting, monthly shares of this information for learning organizations. And then, of course, if you guys have any particular insights or types of data you definitely want to see included, feel free to let us know as well. The third item we're focusing on this year is expanded content. I know a lot of our members of the XtremeLabs community come from the Microsoft world, and that's certainly where we have a lot of content in. But we also are extending our content to also include other technologies like AWS, other cloud technologies, as well as other platforms and services. So this includes things like CompTIA, VMware, I think I mentioned AWS, and other technologies like that. We also really want to make sure that we're following the needs of the XtremeLabs community. So if your organization is forecasting a certain topic that you're not sure if we already have content in, feel free to reach out to us, and we can either share any content we might already have, or we can help you custom build something. And the fourth one is partnerships. So we're really fortunate to be in a position where we work with a wide variety of partners, from publishers to authors and SMEs to teachers and professors at colleges. So all of these different members of the community are able to give us their own perspective on what works with students, what could be improved, and we definitely factor all of that into our new features and our roadmap. But partnerships also means the business partnerships we have. I know a lot of you are instructors and MCTs in particular, and we definitely value partnerships with instructors as well as with Microsoft learning partners, because we gain a lot of insight from you. And then fifth is quality. So Nick on this call, is a key proponent of quality at XtremeLabs. Our support team, helps on the front line with any issues instructors or students might have. And I know Nick in particular is a very strong user advocate And we try not to just react to any issues that might arise because, the Azure UI changes or something like that. But we also try to be as proactive as possible. And this year, that's something we will be particularly focusing on, is trying to make sure that our labs are updated before a new UI is rolled out, or older labs are updated or restaged well before their end of life is up. And finally, and probably the number one theme of this webinar is community. Part of that initiative is this webinar series. And then we'll be also reaching out in other ways throughout this year to make sure that we're hearing you, and we are adding new features, new labs that will help you in your role, whether that's instructor, admin, or student. Feel free to let me know in the chat if there's any feedback on this. Otherwise, we will move on to some questions that Maury and I will be asking each other. All right. Well, Maury, hope you're doing well today.
Yes.
Happy January.
Yeah.
So Maury, as the Director of Market Development, as our Chief Training Officer, what are you focusing on this year?
With COVID changing our life forever, in a sense of working with the learning partners, colleges, universities, vocational schools, enterprise organizations, it seems like that this year all of them will require a lot of attention as they see more and more the value of the hands-on digital labs more than ever before. Not just because the shift of studying in the classroom to being virtual, but also that the past 2 years have given opportunities for a lot of the MCTs and non-MCT instructors to want more features, more tools for the audience, specifically and primarily because they're not able to see them face to face in the classroom. So that's asked of me that I work with a lot of the developers in our team to always provide the audience out there with all these new features and new tools that the audience keeps asking for.
Thanks, Maury. That's a good answer. And more generally, not just for XtremeLabs, but where do you see this industry going? And by this industry, I mean training, labs, more general than just us, and the education and kind of technology training industry.
Yeah, so by listening to a variety of subject matter experts representing a variety of companies out there, meaning Microsoft, AWS, VMware, Cisco, Red Hat, and what have you, the push is definitely to take everything to the cloud. And by taking everything to the cloud, also puts a lot of, I don't want to use the word pressure, but creativity on our side to come up with better products, faster products, more tools for the audience to be able to access the digital labs. A lot of centers have a lot of learning partner companies have minimized their real estate space. Before a lot of centers used to have 5 classrooms, 10 classrooms. Now that's being downsized to less than 5, primarily because everything is going virtual. So the dynamics of the industry has changed. The economics of the industry has changed, and I think a lot of instructors are seeing more and more the value of how to monetize and utilize the digital labs to deliver the training, not just for the IT training not just for the IT training classes, but also for the non IT training. So not everything has to be surrounding a virtual machine. It can also be the labs for cybersecurity, where it could be an exercise, but not necessarily always having to touch a network or a computer.
Got it. So I think these are all sentiments and insights that we've been hearing from a wide variety of our partners. And I know you've been talking to training organizations as well as customers and partners who perform other types of training as well as technology training. And I wonder, how do you see the role of labs, this year or in the future?
Definitely the demand for customized labs. And by the way, when I mean customized, the lab does not have to be entirely reconfigured, but just, we'll use the word tweaked slightly, either to coincide with the Microsoft official curriculum, or as we know, especially for the MCTs who are on this call, a lot of instructors sometimes develop their own content because different clients have different needs. Not every company operates the same way. So as such, they might use 2-3 modules from this course and 2-3 modules from that course. So definitely the demand for customized labs has been bigger than ever, whether it's on the academic side or the private sector side, meaning the enterprise world, the Accentures, the IBMs, the Capgemini, those companies. A lot of customization has picked up, and also it's very interesting to find out a lot of people don't really know how training labs really work. I get asked many times, so is it YouTube? Is it a simulation? And so we do a lot of demos that Nick is heavily involved in, where we explain to people that this is a virtual machine, that every student has their own virtual machine, they're able to save. So all this functionality, although I thought a lot of instructors knew it out there, but there was definitely a lot of people that were not aware of how powerful the digital training labs can be. Oops, you're on mute, Judy.
Thanks, Maury. That sounds good. So I don't see any other questions in the meeting chat. So would you like to go ahead with your questions for me?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you see the roadmap for XtremeLabs this year, 2022?
Yeah, so in addition to the initiatives, the 6 initiatives that I was sharing on my screen, I see that we have a lot of what I'll call customized user journeys. So what that means is being able to help users provide immediate feedback on areas where they need improvement, as well as being able to help show them what a certification path will look like once they've completed a certain lab or a certain course. So they both kind of approach the same problem, which is helping users figure out where they are on their journey, whether that's towards a certain certification or whether that's helping them become, more experienced in whatever role they're learning. And so the first is kind of within the lab. How do we make sure that users are understanding the material and we're providing feedback on what they're doing well in learning versus what they may need more practice in? And then on the second level, it's okay, now you've finished this lab, what's next? Is there a lab that would naturally be the next level for this subject? Or is it that you explored one particular facet of this role and now there's another facet that you can also explore? So that's something that we're going to be exploring in a lot more detail this year. We're also going to continue focusing on giving instructors more control over the classroom and over the student lab environment. We made some really good progress last year in some of the different instructor features that Nick was showing earlier. But we want to continue listening to instructor and, for example, MCT feedback so we can keep making that a better experience.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and here's the million-dollar question, I guess, is what are some ways that you approach innovation at XtremeLabs?
Well, that's one of my favorite questions, Maury. So, of course, my first answer has to be, well, it comes from our community. You know, we have to make sure that what we do is serving the people in the community. And again, this is the theme throughout this first webinar, but it's that we want to listen to all of you, and we want to make sure that whether there's an issue or whether there's just a certain unmet need in the lab environment or around the lab experience, that we are listening to you. I think that oftentimes innovation can be taken as, you know, technical wizardry. And while we certainly have some of that on our team, I think what true innovation is figuring out what people need. And sometimes that can be something that's very simple, like, for example, you know, the UI needs some adjusting so that the classroom experience is a little bit more optimal for instructors. Or it can be something a little bit more complex, like I can't, like the way that this lab experience is laid out, I'm not able to learn something as completely as if it were done a different way. And so for us, and certainly for the product team at XtremeLabs, we want to make sure that our ears are wide open to hear any of the feedback that's coming back from the community. But we also want to spend more time observing how our users are using our labs so that we can figure out and find those times when we're noticing that, you know, that experience could be optimized a little bit more. And of course, you know, going to conferences, listening to webinars, evaluating all the new technology that's constantly coming out, and things like that.
Okay.
Maury, was there anything to add to that question yourself?
Innovation, you know, there's always think tanks at every company and organization. So we get feedback from a lot of MCTs that that really is very good input for our team, because ultimately the instructors, the MCTs, and the students are where we get the real feedback from, because we can sit all day and work on creating new products, but ultimately it's the end user that tell us that the product works or does not work. So we're always very appreciative and very humbled by the feedback that we receive from the community. And the audiences come from all around the world. You know, XtremeLabs serves companies and schools and up to 167 countries. And the very interesting how a variety of feedback that comes back to us. When I say us, sometimes it goes back to the lab support team. So Nick sees a lot of comments that come back to our team. And then sometimes it comes directly to me when someone wants to place a purchase and says, can we do this or that in a different way next time? And again, definitely one of the things that happened in the COVID, we're still in it, I know, but definitely increased is classes are extending in time. The duration of classes has changed from being Monday through Friday, but stretching out to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and so on. So that tells me that the instructors are seeing the extra benefit of having labs being with their or combined with their lecture classes, and not just covering it in the first 2 days and then the rest doing lecture. So the amalgamation of the lecture and hands-on, I think, definitely has helped the students provide a better experience for the classroom. Because ultimately, our objective is to provide tools, great tools for the instructor to deliver a great class, and then both our collective mission or vision is to make sure that the students really understand the content and appreciate what they're learning for their next endeavor, whether it's to take an industry certification or just feel more knowledgeable about what they're learning. So.
Thanks, Maury. And so it looks like we are running out of time here. So I'll just glance at the meeting chat one more time to see if any more questions have come in. Looks like we've answered them all. Maury provided his email address, and as always, you can reach out to our support team if you have any issues within a lab or if you have any questions about our lab environment. And then for any general questions about labs, such as which labs we have, how to use them, and how to work with us, you can always reach out to info@XtremeLabs.io. So in closing, I wanted to thank you all very much for being here. Please let us know if you have any questions from today's demo or discussion, and we'll be scheduling our next webinar for March. So in future webinars this year, we'll be inviting guest speakers and panelists from our XtremeLabs community, and we really value your feedback. And if you have any feedback on our webinar series or on our lab product, please don't hesitate to reach out. Again, that's info@XtremeLabs.io. And once again, thank you so much for being here.